Michael Jordan versus LeBron James, or in other words, the NBA GOAT conversation, which really became a thing only back in 2016 when LeBron won his championship with the Cleveland Cavaliers. At the time, this debate was being mentioned a little bit every now and then, but with LeBron putting up the unprecedented longevity that he has posted, this debate has really ramped up a lot in recent times. Nikola Jokic, currently the best player in the world, could be having a historical night, putting up a ridiculous stat line, getting his team the W in a very close matchup. But when I tune into the sports media outlets, this debate is all they want to talk about. Now, YouTube is literally television to me. So I have seen countless videos done by several YouTubers on this very topic. And although for the most part they're all pretty good, none of them really approaches this topic from all the angles possible. So I made my own. I wanted to use all the information out there, all the pieces of data, to approach this debate from all the angles possible and put this matter to rest once and for all. So let's get right into it. I decided on 7 key categories to compare these players. In no particular order of importance, these are accolades, statistics, circumstances, who had how much help, who faced better competition, who faced a tougher era, their performance in the clutch, peak, longevity, and the eye test. When we talk about accolades for both of these players, we see that Jordan has more rings, more finals MVPs, 1 more regular season MVP, more all-defense selections, has also won a Defensive Player of the Year award, 9 more scoring titles, as well as 3 more steals titles. Whereas LeBron has more All-NBA selections, 1 more assist title, and more All-Star nods. So straight off the bat, we can see that Michael Jordan wins this category with more accolades across the board. But I really want to put some things into perspective here. If I give you 2 players, and both of them had won 2 rings, both times they were the finals MVP, and they had also won a regular season MVP award, but player A had also won a Defensive Player of the Year, and had led the league in a major statistical category 7 more times than player B. What would you think of these 2 players? I mean, they're both Hall of Fame level talents, right? So who are these guys? Well, player B is Kevin Durant, and player A is the gap in awards won by Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Basically, the gap in their awards is still bigger than Kevin Durant's whole career resume, who in his own right is a top 15 player all time. In fact, there have been 36 players who have won the regular season MVP award, 21 of which have also won a finals MVP in some point in their career, and only 9 of them have also won a scoring title. Only Giannis Antetokounmpo, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Michael Jordan have won an MVP, finals MVP, and a DPOY award in their career. And only 1 player has done all of the above, Michael Jordan. In fact, there have only been 4 instances when a player has won the scoring title, that means that they were the best player on the offensive end, been selected to the first team all-defense, that means that they were the best player on the defensive end, and won the regular season MVP, the championship, as well as the finals MVP in the same season. Those 4 instances, Jordan in 1991, Jordan again in 92, and for a third time in 96, and for a last time in 1998. When the category of accolades is concerned, even though LeBron James has had a tremendous career, it's still not close. This category goes to Michael Jordan. But what about the main category of this video? You know, the one most driven by the numbers. Statistics. When looking at statistics for both of these players, in the regular season, Michael Jordan has more points per game, more steals per game, more blocks per game, as well as shoots better from the free throw line and has fewer turnovers per game. Whereas LeBron has the advantage when it comes to assists, rebounds, general shooting from the field, as well as shooting from the 3-point line. So Jordan wins 5 out of the 9 categories in this situation. And the same continues in the playoffs, with Jordan taking home points per game, steals per game, 3-point percentage, free throw percentage, and fewer turnovers, while LeBron this time takes home assists per game, rebounds per game, blocks per game, and general shooting from the field, giving Michael Jordan a slight edge when it comes to traditional statistics, both in the regular season as well as the playoffs, having won 5 out of the possible 9. But what if we go deeper into the numbers? What about advanced statistics? Well, in that case, Jordan wins in PER, which is the player efficiency rating. It's an all-encompassing metric which evaluates the player's impact on the court. He also wins win shares per 48 minutes, box plus minus on the offensive as well as the defensive side, total box plus minus, and LeBron wins true shooting percentage and value over replacement. And the same trend continues in the playoffs, with Jordan taking home PER, win shares per 48, offensive, defensive, and total box plus minus. And LeBron wins the categories of true shooting percentage as well as value over replacement. Now, we looked at both traditional as well as advanced stats for both of these players. But who's the better basketball player? Many fans of LeBron like to point out that LeBron is the most complete and the best all-around basketball player that the world has ever seen. And I'm sure you guys have seen plenty of clips of Ray Allen arguing with fans on LeBron's overall gameplay. So, is that statement really true? I mean, is LeBron James really the best all-around basketball player that we've ever seen? When it comes to scoring, it's not true. Michael Jordan is a far superior scorer between these two players. He has a higher points per game average in the regular season as well as the playoffs, has 9 more scoring titles, more than double the number of 50-point games, more than double the number of 40-point games, and more 40-point games shooting an elite 60% or higher from the field. Now, I came across this post on the Real GM forum, which looks at 126 different games from Michael Jordan's prime and creates a shot chart showing his efficiency while shooting from various zones on the court. So it got me thinking, what if I take LeBron's shot chart from his peak days with the Miami Heat and compare it to this to figure out who the better shooter is? By the way, shout out to Dipper13 for collecting this extensive data set. It's really amazing knowing that we have some kind of data from Michael Jordan's prime, before the NBA started officially tracking these stats back in '97. When looking at the shot charts, both Michael Jordan as well as LeBron James are elite finishers at the rim, making about 2 out of every 3 shots. But as you move away from the rim, a trend emerges that shows that no matter where you pick on the court, Mike could shoot it better than LeBron. I mean, looking at LeBron's shot chart, he's not really that effective or efficient anywhere except within 5 feet of the basket. Whereas Jordan literally owns the mid-range and, contrary to popular opinion, happens to be an elite 3-point shooter. Well, except that right corner 3. And many of you guys might be thinking, is it really big enough sample size? I mean, Jordan didn't shoot a lot of threes, and you'd be right, but 250 3-point shots is a big enough sample size. I'd like to attach some context surrounding the number of 3-point attempts. Here's a chart showing the number of 3-point attempts versus the 3-point field goal percentage. As you go from left to right, the number of 3-point attempts increases, and as you go from bottom to top, the 3-point field goal percentage increases. You can see that there's a clear trend. The more threes you attempt, the better you get at shooting them. For reference, here's Stephen Curry and Russell Westbrook. Stephen Curry is the greatest shooter in NBA history, no doubt, and the data backs it up. Russell Westbrook, for all his great talents on the court, is not a good 3-point shooter, and the data proves that too. Now here's Michael Jordan and LeBron James. As you can see, when Michael Jordan started attempting more than 1 3-pointer a game, he started getting much better at it. And for the 3 or 4 seasons where he was attempting more than 3 a game, he actually shot them at a very elite 38% clip, which was outstanding for his era and would still be elite in today's day. Whereas LeBron, for the most part, his efficiency has not changed regardless of the number of attempts he makes. So the myth that Jordan had a weakness or a flaw in his game, which was a 3-point shot, is simply not true. It just wasn't a part of his game as much, but he was a good 3-point shooter. But defense is equally as important as offense. So when we look at the other side of the ball, again, it's not close. Michael Jordan is the far more superior defender, and by a mile. He's won a Defensive Player of the Year award in his career. He's made all NBA defensive team selections 3 more times than LeBron, and averages more steals and blocks per 100 possessions. He also boasts a higher defensive win shares per 48 minutes and a higher defensive box plus minus. Now, earlier we looked at the shot chart data for both Michael Jordan as well as LeBron James to analyze their shooting efficiencies from various zones on the court. And I want to replicate that for the defensive side of things. For LeBron, getting that data is easy. It's located on NBA.com under their stats section called the Defense Dashboard, which goes all the way back to the 2013-14 season, where you can look at their defensive shot charts and opponents' field goal percentage when they were the primary defender in the regular season as well as the playoffs from various zones on the floor. But unfortunately, this same data is not available for Michael Jordan's time. Luckily for you guys, I personally went through and analyzed all the old video footage from all the Bulls games in the 1991 playoff run, noting down each and every time when Michael Jordan was a primary defender and how their opponents shot from various zones on the court to replicate the data that we have for LeBron. And here's what I found out. While looking at their opponent's field goal percentage when they were the primary defender, Michael Jordan does a better job at protecting the rim. And as we move away from the rim, Michael Jordan does even better, holding his opponents to only 10% from the three-point line. 10%. Whereas for LeBron James, looking at his opponent's field goal percentage from various zones, it's almost as if whether he was there or not, it would not have made a difference. This is why Michael Jordan is widely regarded as the greatest two-way player in NBA history. And there's a strong argument to be made that he is the best perimeter defender in NBA history. Now, before we look at the rebounding numbers for both of these players, I want to add some context here. If I give you two players and the first one averaged one more rebound than the second one, you'd say the first one is the better rebounder, right? Well, in this situation, the first player is Miles Turner and the second player is DeJounte Murray. Miles Turner is a 6'11" center who ranks 165th all-time when it comes to rebounding, whereas DeJounte Murray is a 6'5" guard who ranks 18th all-time when it comes to rebounding. DeJounte Murray is the better rebounder for his position and size than is Miles Turner for his. Keeping that in mind, when we look at these two players and their rebounding numbers, at first LeBron looks like the better rebounder. But Michael Jordan consistently ranks higher within guards at offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, as well as total rebounds than LeBron does within forwards. So given position and size, Michael Jordan is the better rebounder. But when it comes to playmaking, it's not close. We've all seen the kind of impressive passes that LeBron James can make. His assist numbers as well as his assist to turnover ratio prove that. He also consistently ranks higher within forwards than Michael Jordan does within guards. LeBron gets the edge when it comes to playmaking. Although Michael Jordan does handle the rock better, as is evidenced by his lower turnovers. So the notion that LeBron James is the best all-around basketball player that the world has ever seen is not true. Michael Jordan happens to be the superior scorer, the better shooter, the far superior defender, the better rebounder, arguably, and can handle the rock better. So, having looked at all of these categories, from traditional statistics to advanced statistics and deep diving into individual aspects surrounding their gameplay, I have to give this category to Michael Jordan. You know, how you win a championship matters. It ain't just the number of rings that you have, it's also about how you got them. Recently, many analysts try to uplift modern NBA players by trying to insult the older generations and calling them plumbers and firemen. JJ Redick, Nick Wright, and Shannon Sharpe, yeah, I'm talking about you. The players of today might just be better than the players of previous generations, but that's largely only because of better sports science, better nutrition, and getting into the game much earlier in their childhood than otherwise. Coming back to Jordan and LeBron, if we look at the team records, or a better metric, the SRS score of the teams that they faced, it paints a pretty fair picture of the competition that they had. Well, you might be thinking, what is this SRS? Well, according to Basketball Reference, simple rating system is a rating that takes into account average point differential and strength of schedule. Basically what it means is that the higher the SRS, the stronger a team is and the harder it is to beat them. If we evaluate their opponents in the playoffs by SRS score, Jordan has faced tougher opponents in the first round, the second round, as well as the conference finals. In the finals, LeBron has faced a tougher opponent. But that still means that Jordan has faced the overall far tougher conference and in general, the tougher route to the championship. You know, each year the NBA selects 15 guys to represent on their all-NBA teams. You know, these are the best of the best, the superstars. And the strength of a team is strongly related to their top-end talent. So I was thinking, what if we evaluate how many All-NBA players were in each conference during the time at which these players played? When Jordan played in the East, 45% of all his competition was in the Eastern Conference, whereas when LeBron played in the East, only 30% of his competition was in the East, further solidifying the argument of the Eastern Conference during his time. But basketball is a 5-on-5 game, so we should also take a look at their teammates, right? How many All-Stars did they play with? What kind of players did they have as support? What kind of help did they have when they were playing against the aforementioned competition? When looking at the help that both of these players had, Michael Jordan played with a player who had been selected to the All-Star game in that same season 6 times in his career. LeBron, 12 times. Michael Jordan never played with 2 All-Star teammates at the same time, whereas LeBron has done that 5 times in his career. All of Michael Jordan's All-Star teammates came from one guy, Scottie Pippen, whereas LeBron has had help from the likes of Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, Big Z, and Mo Williams. And Michael Jordan's record when he had an All-Star teammate in the playoffs is 19-2. The 2 losses? Well, the first one came in the conference finals in 1990 when Scottie Pippen had a migraine and sat out in a Game 7 win or go home. And the second came in 1995 when he just returned towards the end of the season after playing baseball for a year and a half. For LeBron, that record stands at 29-7. And of those 7 losses, 3 of the times he had 2 All-Star teammates who were both healthy. Now, there's this narrative that LeBron needs more help. I mean, it's kind of always been around since his early Cavs days, before, the decision to take his talents to South Beach. But back then it was actually true, and now it's kind of getting out of hand. Look, I personally don't hold it against LeBron for going and getting help. I mean, do what you gotta do to win a ring. Magic had Kareem and Worthy, Bird had McHale and Parrish, right? But the notion that LeBron doesn't have help or needs more is just factually wrong. In addition to the huge amount of All-Star help he's had, LeBron has played with 245 different players during his career. Michael Jordan has played with a total of 116. In fact, LeBron's teams have traded a total of 120 different assets, which includes players and first-round picks during his career. For Michael Jordan, that number is 35. And what's really interesting is that for LeBron, the number of players and first-round picks traded during the years when he reached the finals totals up to 68. For Michael Jordan, that number is 7. 7 players or picks. 7 for 6 championships. In fact, LeBron has had more help from his front office than double that of Jordan and Kobe combined, who had a total of 26 such picks traded during their finals runs. Now, before I get to exploring the differences in eras for both of these players, I'd like to quickly address a topic that has recently been making the rounds on social media. We done with the 90s. I'm sure most of you guys are already aware of what it is, but for those of you who are not, a certain section of the fan base is claiming that the NBA as it was in the 90s and to that extent even the 80s was not actually as good as people remember them to be. Their saying is that the league as a whole was vastly overrated and that the players back then were not nearly as good as they are today. Now, I'm working on another video where I'm going to be examining this statement, looking at the facts and the data in detail to evaluate whether there is some validity to that statement or not. But when it comes to both of these players and this context, I'd just like to say this. Having seen the games across multiple eras, I can safely say that the NBA officiating is much more lenient in today's day and age. In today's game, the offensive player can routinely take another step during their dribble, sometimes even 2, 3 or 4 without the refs calling it a travel. They can place their hand completely below the basketball, bringing it to a standstill and then resume their dribble without being called for a carry. Defenders are not allowed to stay in the lane for more than 3 seconds, or else it's a free throw for the other team. And defenders are not allowed to hand check their opponents, guiding them to where they want them to shoot from on the floor. All of these rules massively benefit the offensive player, and as such, they have a lot of freedom to develop skills to add to their bag, which they later pull out during in-game situations. So, are the players offensively better today than the previous generations? Yes, probably, because the rules allow them to be. But the whole point of basketball as a sport is to put the ball in the hoop and prevent the other team from doing the same. As such, defense is just as important as offense. So the same rules which have made them offensively better have hampered their defensive development. And so the players of the past generations were far better defenders than they are today. So if players today on average are better offensively, and players back then on average were better defensively, which generation or era had the better overall basketball skill set? Well, unless an all-decade team from the 2010s and the 2020s faces off in a hypothetical matchup against the 90s and the 80s, we will never know the answer to that question. But just because a player is better offensively does not make him a better overall basketball player. When Jordan was in the league, hand checking was allowed. There was no defensive 3-second violation. Flagrant fouls of today were barely even common fouls back then. And there were legit strong 7-footers like Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaq, Patrick Ewing, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, just lurking in the paint waiting to swat you down like a fly the minute you decide to make an appointment with them at the rim. In today's day and age, and especially the last decade, you cannot so much as touch the player. The defensive 3-second violation rule exists, which leaves the paints wide open for drives to the rim. Ticky-tack fouls are called, which inflates scoring, especially for the superstars. And there has been a mass extinction of quality big men. So, all in all, when you evaluate these things, you realize that Michael Jordan just did more with less on his team while facing tougher opponents in a more difficult era. And for that reason, I have to give this category of circumstances in Michael Jordan's favor. When thinking of game tying or game winning shots, Jordan is more efficient than LeBron, whichever way you look at it. I mean, if you define it within 24 seconds or less, Jordan scores a staggering 50%, whereas LeBron stands at 37%. 10 seconds or less, Jordan is pretty similar at 47%. LeBron in this case is not too far behind at 41. 5 seconds or less, Jordan is at 45 and LeBron is at 41. But when we consider the biggest stage of all, the finals, with 25 seconds left or less to hit a game winner or a tire, Michael Jordan hits a staggering 50%, whereas LeBron has gone 0 for 7. Jordan's shooting percentages in the clutch are no different than anywhere else in the game, which is what makes him clutch. LeBron is a pretty good clutch shooter too, but he has fallen short when it comes to the biggest stage in the world of the NBA. And for that reason alone, I would have to give this category to Michael Jordan. I think Pat Riley said it best. If you had to choose a player to take a shot to save a game, you would choose Michael Jordan. If you had to choose a player to take a shot to save your life, you would take Larry Bird. Shout out to Larry Bird. Man was the most cold-blooded player in NBA history. But when it comes to these two, the clutch category goes to Michael Jordan. For the purpose of peak, we're going to consider the best 6-year stretch that the two players had. For Jordan, it was 1988 to 1993, and for LeBron, well, you can pick so many because he has been elite for so long, but personally, I'm going to pick his Miami days and his second stint with the Cavs, so 2011 to 2016. When it comes to it, Jordan simply won more in his peak. I mean, they both won the same number of rings, had the same number of finals MVPs, but Jordan managed to snag one more regular season MVP than LeBron, as well as managed to win a Defensive Player of the Year award. He also led the league in a major statistical category, in this case points and steals, a total of 9 times as compared to 0 times for LeBron. They both made All-NBA First Team each year in their prime, but Jordan also managed to make All-Defense First Team 3 more times than LeBron did. Now, I found this metric called the game score, which was a statistic developed by John Hollinger that holistically looks at all the aspects of a box score to kind of reduce it into one single number describing a player's overall impact on a game. And I thought to myself, in the prime, how a player does game to game matters. So I decided to compute their average game scores in their primes to see who had the better game on a daily basis. For some context, an average NBA player averages a game score of about 5 per game. When you look at starters, it ranges from 9 to about 13. An all-star gets about 16.5, and an all-NBA player gets about 18. Our first massive jump comes with LeBron James, who averaged a staggering 22 in his prime. But Jordan is in a league by himself, averaging 27. To put that into perspective, here's LeBron James with his average game score of 22.2. Here's Tim Duncan, who in his prime averaged a game score of 18.3. which happens to be the same as an All-NBA player in the year of their selection. And here's Jordan, with an average of 27. LeBron's average daily performance is closer to Tim Duncan than it is to Michael Jordan. So when it comes to the matter of peaks, it's not close. Jordan wins this category in a landslide. When it comes to longevity, many fans believe that this is LeBron's main claim to being considered the greatest player of all time. Just playing for so long at such a high level that it becomes hard to even argue with. And they're absolutely right. This man has an unprecedented level of longevity under his belt and is still going strong at the age of 39. When we look at the cumulative statistics for both of these players, which includes the regular season plus the playoffs, LeBron James has played more games as well as logged more minutes than Michael Jordan. He also has way more points, rebounds and assists and has blocked more shots than Michael Jordan. The only two categories in which Michael Jordan comes out on top is having had more steals and having logged fewer turnovers. So, on face value, LeBron's longevity is pretty good, right? But, in fact, it is so good that throughout the years, he has managed to play against 10 father-son duos. 10. On top of that, he has played with or against 35% of all players in NBA history. And as of this upload, in 2024, there are at least 40 players in the NBA right now who were born after LeBron was even drafted. So when it comes to longevity, it's not close. LeBron wins this category by a mile. Now, earlier we mentioned that you can use numbers to evaluate the eye test, and that is exactly what we're going to do here. You see, we are fans of the game, but we don't really play it at a pro level. So we base our opinions on who is the better player and who's the greater player based on their careers, their accolades, the narratives, and many times even the media. But if you've ever played a sport or a game at some level or the other, you know who's the best player. You know when you go up against them. You just know. So what do the players think about this debate? Well, I went through countless tweets, posts and interviews of several NBA players, or at least the ones that I could find who had given an answer on this topic, and I was able to collect the responses from 141 different players, both past as well as current. Some of these guys played against both Michael Jordan as well as LeBron James, and also includes their teammates. When we look at the whole population of 141 different players, nearly 3 out of every 4 picks Michael Jordan to be the greatest player of all time. If we look at the players who played against both of them, 85% of them think Michael Jordan is the GOAT. And again, 4 out of every 5 teammates that they've had still picks Michael Jordan to be the best ever. So again, when it comes to the eye test, the players select Michael Jordan to be the better of the two, and so he wins this category as well. So by now, I'm sure all of you guys know that as far as these 7 categories are concerned, the tally stands at 6-1 in favor of Michael Jordan. Living in LA, I hear and see about LeBron a lot, and this GOAT debate rages on now more so than ever. So as an avid basketball fan, I wanted to know the true and unbiased answer from this analysis just as much as I wanted to show it to you guys. And having seen basketball for so long, over so many years, I had a brief idea of who is most likely going to come out on top. Because let's face it, Jordan's career seems crazy, right? But what you didn't know is that the deeper you look into it, his career seems even crazier. While watching the videos of players picking their GOAT, I noticed that many of them said stories about Michael Jordan. And all of those stories ended in Mike taking things personally and destroying them on the court. But they still had $1 million smile on their face. Their eyes sparkled with joy. They were in awe of him. It's as if they were reliving a childhood dream when their favorite hero came to school to meet them. They witnessed greatness. History will be kind to LeBron. He will be remembered for all the statistics that he has put up and all that he has done for the game of basketball. All the players respect him, but they admire Michael Jordan. They appreciate him. They're inspired by him. And those who played against him feared him. It's been 25 years since he took that last shot in Utah in 1998, and we still talk about him all the time. In the 2000s, Kobe Bryant was being actively compared to Michael Jordan. In the 2010s as well as right now, LeBron is being compared to Jordan. And after LeBron retires, the next crop of superstars and the best players in the world at that time will again be compared to Michael Jordan. And chances are they will all most likely fall short of what Michael Jordan accomplished in 13 healthy seasons. It's not the fact that Jordan went 6-0 in the finals and never saw a finals game 7. It's not that he had 10 scoring titles, 9 all-defensive team selections, a Defensive Player of the Year award, or the highest scoring average in league history. It's not even the MVPs, the finals MVPs, or the other accolades. And it's also not the shoes, the global impact, the cultural effect, or Space Jam. Is that he did all of those things in a relatively short career for a superstar. We saw basketball perfection in Michael Jordan. In Michael Jordan, we saw the greatest basketball player of all time. And it's never been close.
But Michael Jordan, by far, I don't see anybody being close to that. You know, he's a 10. There's a lot of 7s and 8s out there, but there's no 9s or 10s.
I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you during next time's upload. God bless you all.